and marketing for domestic US brands. And then also we have this interesting niche because a lot of global companies come to us to help, with their first sales hire or sales leadership hire or marketing hire. So it's kind of cool.
Awesome. And how long have you had the company?
I've had Naviga for 18 years now. I've been in recruiting for 25. I started in corporate recruiting and then worked my way up in corporate recruiting leadership at a tech company. And then I was actually an expat overseas in Amsterdam for a couple of years. And then when 9/11 hit, they sent us all back and I was like, what do I want to do? So I started Naviga right after.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what were some of the initial challenges as you went from corporate recruiting to, owning your own recruiting business? I can imagine there was a lot of change there.
New biz dev for sure. It's like, I didn't have to do any new business development as a corporate recruiting leader or a corporate recruiting team. So the first thing I did when I started it, I just started contacting a lot of people that I knew in the industry, like execs that I used to work for internally at corporations. And I told them what I was doing and they were receptive. And I found that, getting positions was easier than I had thought, on the recruiting agency side. So the momentum just started happening and we went from there.
Got it. And I would imagine you started off as like a one person show or?
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. And at first I had, so basically like what I did is as soon as I received more business, I would hire a contract recruiter and then I would receive more positions, a contract recruiter and pull them in. But then we got to a point where I had so much business, I ended up flip-flopping and hiring people perm. And so it was kind of like an evolution of how the whole business grew. But yeah, I started out slow. I had no funding.
Right.
I just did it step by step. As soon as more cash would come in, then I would make a business decision. And honestly, I didn't have a business plan beforehand. So it's been a pretty unique ride.
That's great. Now, I mean, kind of talking about that first hire, because I know a lot of people use that same type of a model of, kind of maximize yourself, then you kind of bring in some contract recruiting. Was there at any point something that kind of gave you like, okay, yeah, you know what, I need to actually bring somebody on full time? Was there like a kind of a point in time where you're like, yeah, this is a must now instead of doing the contract?
You can do different things with full-timers than you can with contractors. And being on the corporate side, I was like raised on process and high level of professionalism, response time, and all that stuff, like these intangible characteristics. You can't tell a contractor how to behave. That's the truth. So they're gonna get me the person, and I need to keep my mouth shut, no matter what you do. No matter how hard you try to influence the results from a 1099er, it just doesn't happen the way I wanted it. And so we got to a point where business was happening. I had enough cash flow. And I started doing that little by little. I didn't do it all overnight. And now we've got a beautiful culture, really, really awesome team that I love. And it's going great.
Great. How big is the team now?
Just 6 people.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
6 people strong.
So outside of, recruiters or business developers, like what else do you have on your staff? Do you have anybody specifically designed for marketing or ops or?
I do. I've got a director of accounts, and she's been with me forever. She basically handles all new contracts that come in and leads that come in, and she qualifies them and converts them to deals. And then she also manages all existing customers, like the interaction with those customers for the most part. And then I've got a marketing manager, and she's the behind the scenes, like strategy, content, design, you name it. We do a lot with marketing. So she's very, very busy. And then I've got another person that's like morphed into a recruiting coordinator and marketing coordinator. She kind of does both, and she's my assistant. So yes. And then the rest of them are recruiters. So yeah.
Awesome.
one is a sourcer too. Can't
Got
forget
it.
my sourcer.
Got it.
Yeah.
What, I know one of the things that we talked about, prior to getting on the show was your ability to kind of embrace more of a modern marketing, quite some time back. This is something I teach people with now, and some people are still resistant around it, but
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of a high level on what kind of online marketing has done for your business over the years.
It's been pivotal, excuse me. I don't know if this is a weakness or a strength, but I didn't look to my left or right when it came to looking at what other recruiting firms were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at best practices, relevant trends, things that other businesses, it could be retail, it could be tech, it could be software, it could be anything. Like, what were they doing to market,
Right.
and what were they doing to get leads that came in? And, I was like, all right, I started with pay-per-click, and we had a massive budget, and it worked wonderfully. Like, it attracted major businesses to come to my organization. And then when Google started indexing differently, it didn't work out. The leads weren't coming in. We were still, paying the same. And we started having an emphasis on SEO and a lot of back-end content. And we had to be more intentional with our marketing and not just throw out a simple ad and an email once a month, to customers. So, yeah, so that's kind of where it started and how it started trending in that direction.
Right. And the majority of your business now comes from like online marketing and lead generation now, correct?
It does that, and existing customers.
Yeah, repeat business. Yeah.
Repeat
But
business.
from like an actual systematic thing, are you guys doing much cold calling or anything like that too, or no?
We have a top 55 of our existing customers that we feel are our top 55. We've got many more, but we've got a top 55. And we have a weekly process every single week where we're soliciting them, and we're kind of doing a right hook, if you will. We're not calling and asking for business, but we're giving them a tip, a really cool tip. Like, say if we see a job posting and it's relevant to our world, it's a sales and marketing posting, we'll say, hey, I saw that you're hiring. You must be slammed. Here's the tip that we're seeing in the marketplace right now. I thought it might be helpful for you to use this during your process, of recruiting. So
right.
It's a value add. It's a right hook. It's like, oh, whoa, that's different, right?
Right.
So we don't cold call and ask for business. We're showing value, and we are reaching out and staying in front of the customer that way. We do have an integrated plan with that too. We do some things. We hit them up on email at the same time. We do some stuff on LinkedIn with that exact target person.
Right.
After we identify they have an opening, and we're enjoying it. So yeah.
Well, and I think you make a big point of, you're showing up differently. And I think that's so important now. One of the biggest challenges, I speak with hundreds, thousands of recruiters, and one of the challenges that commonly comes up, well, how do I differentiate myself? At the end of the day, I'm just going to put the best body in the seat. And so much of that is just, well, how do I show up differently to the marketplace, add value, so that you can actually give yourself a chance at differentiation.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So outside of, so you're doing some kind of direct messaging strategies and things like that, but, tell us about your kind of content journey and what what was it like when you first started creating content?
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, when we first started creating content, we were just throwing some stuff out there and seeing what would work.
Right.
Sometimes it would work, sometimes it didn't. But then, again, I looked left and right and I said, how do we do this more sophisticated and more targeted? And so we had some focus groups, and we developed some persona marketing around those focus groups with our target audience. So we, asked VPs of sales to talk to us. We asked VPs of HR to talk to us, VPs of marketing, and asked them, what do you want to hear? How often do you want to hear it? What don't you want to hear? What do you do in your pastime for fun? And what's your biggest pain point? Things like that, right? So we started developing content that spoke to the needs specifically of our our audiences. And it's, that's how we're operating. We just actually refreshed our personas in the last couple of weeks, and we're ready to roll.
That's great. It's so it's refreshing to hear how you guys are approaching it and things like that. And I think one of the things that's always overthought is exactly what you guys are doing, which is the market research, this focus groups. Like, how are your, just so other people get a feel of it, like, how receptive was the market when you were actually reaching out asking for market research and stuff?
Well, of course, we asked clients,
Of
right?
course, yep.
People that we were close with, and then we asked a few strangers, on LinkedIn, and they're receptive. We do throw them something to thank them. I mean, just a little like gift card to Amazon or something. But they're totally receptive. People don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I think they're like, all right, I kind of feel excited about this. They actually want me to ask them things. And so they're receptive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's, I'm glad you reiterated that, because I think it's such one of the easiest things of content to create is ask what they want you to create and then create it. It's such a basic thing that's totally overthought, because instead of guessing, you're actually going right to, the horse's mouth, getting exactly what you need and then giving it to them. That's brilliant. Now, how much content do you actually personally create, being the owner of the business?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I used to create some, but I mean, I've got now 1.5 persons that do that. And I'll tell you what, content these days it's not hard to create. It's they're grabbing it from different places, whether it's a testimonial that a client just said about a placement, not formally, right? But then we grab that, we do something with it. It could be obviously this session right now. My marketing person's going to review it. She's going to create content from it. She's going to create an integrated plan all over the place with it, So, it's just, nowadays, actually, I find it so much easier to create content. Before, we used to have somebody that we used to contract out and pay to develop, like we had a blog, salesjournal.com, and it had a really awesome following, but now it's pointed to our website. And we had somebody that we paid her just to do the content as well, but now we just don't have to do it,
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how much, given that you're not doing that much, like how much video marketing do you guys do versus just traditional articles and things like that?
We don't do a lot of video marketing. We just don't. I got into like a trend maybe 10 years ago or something where I did a ton of YouTubes. And I hate being on video giving tips. Like, it's such a drag. Remember when it just was hot? Like, everyone would get on video, create content out of tips and stuff. But I got on that bandwagon. But looking back at the videos, I'm like, we don't even promote them on our website or anything. But that's about it. I don't do a lot with video. I'm doing a lot with guest podcasts now, trending more on video like this, live video or recorded video. So I do a ton of podcast and regular radio shows and stuff like that as guests. So we take that content as well.
Right. And I know you reached out to me to be on the show, and so that's an active part of what you're trying to do is increase your exposure to the market and things like that. Yep.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
I mean, it's easy too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, and it's, and I think the other thing that you brought up that's smart, and I always tell everybody, is like, what from the show, you can repurpose a lot of what you've said on here for your marketing. And one of the advantages of doing it that way is that it comes off very candid, right? You're not here presenting anything. You're being interviewed. You clip up a part of you answering something, and it's got a nice candid piece of content there. So totally. I always, try to remind people that content is way overthought, and it's a lot easier. And going back to what you said earlier, I never really looked right or looked left in the industry. I just kind of focused on, and I think that is a strength, because so many people that I work with and so many people I speak with are so concerned with what everybody else is doing. And when you just come from a place of creation and inspiration and just try and test and fail, I think so much more happens. That sounds like that's kind of how your journey was with this whole thing too.
I would be so bored otherwise.
Yeah.
I would be so bored with just the traditional model that everybody follows,
Yep, so, absolutely.
From what I hear, I don't know, people are struggling with it these days. you
Mhm.
know, the traditional cold call and, you know, so.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's good that you're ahead of the curve there. What kind of, I mean, I know you hate the video tips, but what are a couple of tips you'd give somebody that's looking to kind of get started with the online presence?
I would first ask them to get somebody who is good at creative, you know, some creative that maybe can support the content that goes out there. Uh,
Hmm.
and I would say what you said, actually, don't overthink it. Like, start posting things. Um, it could be funny things.
Hmm.
Do you know what jib jab is or no?
No.
Jib Jab is like a funny video clip of, it could be of a show, and it replaces the head of a real person. So like today on LinkedIn, I posted a jib jab of the show The Office, and I said happy Friday, and the guy was like shoving everything off shelves in an office and just happy, like showing that he's happy that today's a day that he feels confident or something. And
Right.
then it's my face. So it's jib jab is just a funny thing. So, you know, maybe people in business might think that's taboo, but for me, I'm like, who cares? You know, just put it out there and be yourself. And I got more likes from that than I did a tip, you know?
Right. Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's, you bring up a good point, is somebody, I think where we're all programmed is kind of how business was. I mean, even 5, 10 years ago, where stiff corporate,
Yeah.
if you're going to be in business, you need to act and behave this way. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a level of professionalism, but I think that people are now realizing that you're really, at the end of the day, you're marketing to other people, other humans. You're not marketing to a business, and the more that you can build a connection, and that's what social media is allowed for, is, you're actually better off of just being funny, showing up as being yourself, and doing those other things, as well as the adding value part, because it shows more of who you are as an individual.
Right. I also find it interesting because, you know, the cold call is trying to get somebody and have access to them, right?
Right.
Who the heck uses their phone? Who answers their phone? No
Mm-hmm.
one. That
Yep.
means VPs aren't answering their phone either. They're not like on some other planet or something, you know,
Yep.
they're doing what you're doing. They're texting, they're on LinkedIn. So the call is like the very last thing that I ever suggest anybody doing, and just doing other touch points and hitting them in different angles. That really works.
Yeah. No, and it's music to my ears hearing that. I just did a video actually in the group yesterday. It's with what I do, it's like everything we're doing is more modern in terms of what we teach and stuff like that. But there's people that are still teaching programs with people, and the main premise of the program is cold calling. And it's like, okay, I'm not saying that cold calling doesn't work,
I'm not
but it's like the analogy I use is like, I can take a taxi to New York, and I could fly a plane. I mean, they'll both work. Which one do I want to do?
Good point.
And so it's like, I think that's such a good point, that there are other ways outside of cold calling, and it's not going to go back that way. It's only going to get more in the direction it's heading, where, like you're saying, and I think that's a good point that you bring up, and you've experienced it, that the VP at these high level companies actually does text message, actually does get on social media, actually does respond to LinkedIn messages,
Right.
and things like that, where people, for whatever reason, are still in their mind think that the only way I can reach that person is if I cold call them and beat down that door.
Think about it this way too. Even once you land a contract, and I've got all these existing customers, after we kick off a search, they text us, they email us, things like this. They're, when we try to call them, we don't always get them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying we don't talk to our existing customers, but still,
Yeah.
like, even that, if you want a quick transaction to go down, they're not picking up their phone. So they love the quick email or the quick transaction over text. So think about that. And they know us.
Right.
So would somebody randomly pick up a phone call from somebody that, the moon and stars have to be aligned for that to happen. And it's just not effective anymore.
Yeah.
As I don't want to say that because
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. It's the same thing. It's like, of course, people do it, and it still works. But, I think the biggest point is there's a better, more efficient way that can be adopted.
Yeah.
Because it's just a matter of what you value.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's it's fun to watch this industry evolve and the game evolve, and, these other more modern ways of communicating with people. And I think that's when you strip it all down, right? It's like, we're people talking to people, and how are people really communicating now?
Yeah.
If people are really communicating now through text and through social media platforms, then why are we going to go try to, rip that Band-Aid and force them into something that's, old? And I always remind people, it's like, the game at the end of the day is really still going to be won on the phone. I mean, when you're talking to a cold prospect, I mean, yeah, your ultimate goal is to get on the phone with that individual and be able to sell your value, but it's just how you start that interaction, how you get to that ultimate phone call is I think what's most important.
Yeah. No, for sure. I don't know. I'm feeling like I need some type of overhaul of my email strategy. Email's not doing much for me lately. Just,
Right.
What other platforms can do, email's starting to really bore me in terms of what we're getting out of it and what we're putting out there. I just think email like phone is like trending to, not be as relevant. So that's one thing that right now I need to figure out for sure.
Yeah. Now, I think one of the things kind of tying back into cold calling is one of the complaints that I think generally comes with cold calling is, well, my clients don't value me, because when your relationship is started with you doing an outreach and then them going, okay, yeah, you can work on this. But then you go work on it and you're not getting any feedback from the hiring managers and things like that. Well, they don't really see you as being any different than any other recruiter that's cold called them.
Yeah.
How have you guys seen that, or have you seen a difference of like people actually reaching out to you going like, hey, we're calling you because you're good?
Well, think about that. Like, they're looking at our website or they've seen something that makes them want to call us already.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely helpful, and we're a retained firm. So the retainers that we require, it's, I don't want to say easier, but it definitely helps get retainers if businesses are contacting you, right?
Right. Absolutely.
It's hard to do a cold call and essentially beg for can I please work on your position? And oh, by the way, can you pay me $3,000 up front? Like, it would be a really flip of a sell, right? You got to go in a solution mode right after a hard press to try to work. It's a tough sell, asking for a retainer when you're soliciting blind like that. So
yeah, and again, how you can frame a call and how you can position yourself on a call is that much more different.
Yep, 100%.
Than, again, you having to kind of beat down the door and then go solution based, where if somebody's on your calendar, you're controlling that call the entire time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic getting leads in. And I'm humbled by it. I really am. I'm proud of it and I'm humbled by it, because I know any day, that can change. I mean, when things went down with the pandemic in April, obviously we weren't getting leads in. I mean, I'm not going to tell you no lie here. But then May started happening. We started getting new prospects that were contacting us even in May. It's like, okay, this is interesting. And then by June, we were essentially back to normal. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a lot of clients see the same thing, to where there's been a dip and then they're seeing, in some cases better than normal. And in other industries, of course, there's industries that, are going to be a little bit behind. But I think and especially right now, it's like people are online now more than they ever even were before.
Right.
But the challenge now is how do you cut through that noise? Because there's more noise with everything that's going on with Corona, everything that's going on with political, and everything that will continue to go on from here between November. There's going to be a lot of that just with how our country works around election season. So you got to be, being online is one thing, but then you got to be able to be loud and noisy to make sure that you're making that impact that you want. And that's why so many people usually will go dabble online for a couple of weeks and go, oh well, it doesn't work for me. And, as you saw, it took you, probably years to build the presence you've built.
Yep.
And the respect and authority that you've built to get people to come to you.
Yeah. It has not happened overnight.
Yep.
There's been times, we'll be humming and then all of a sudden, maybe for like 2 or 3 weeks, we're like, no leads are coming and what's going on? Is something broken out there? And then we start looking and then, and then all of a sudden they come and we didn't have to fix anything, because sometimes it's just this, this process of the leads coming back to you like a boomerang sometimes. I feel like I've had to be patient, very, very patient, in this type of business development process and lead process. It's hard to force. It's hard to force because marketing isn't about the immediacy. It's not.
Right.
You put a billboard up, an old school billboard up, it's got to be there for a good 3 months until you start seeing a reaction, right? It's just, marketing hasn't changed that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest things, again, going from, if you're cold call and you came from that and you used to having success with that, and you realize that, oh, well, if I just 100 dials a day, I might be able to pick up a customer. And it's not that way anymore. But then you go try to think you're going to have the same expectation online. And most of the times it's not the case. It takes a little bit more of a build and nurture because it's more of a marketing strategy. Not saying you can't get quick wins, but the majority of the momentum takes time to really build up. How long would you say it took before you could really see okay, these efforts are really paying off for me?
Well, I think that could be an unfair question because I used to pay a lot of money for PPC.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the craziest way you could get an immediate lead.
Right.
Per click, literally. You pay this and then, oh, okay. But let's pretend we didn't do PPC, and when we took it away, it's probably a good 5 years to get to the level of, consistent leads coming in, lead source without paying any advertisements. And now it's just this beautiful, incestuous situation, where they just come. So
that's awesome. What are you kind of most excited with your business moving forward now?
I'm just so proud of, seeing that we are different. Having gotten more involved recently, I'd say in the last 4 or 5 months, with recruiting discussions and people who are in the industry and such, I'm proud of what we've done, because we've got something special, to have leads coming into the business and, major organizations contacting us and repeat business. This isn't chump change here. We've done something amazing, comparatively. So I'm really proud about it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, it's good that you can sit back and be proud of the journey. I mean, 18 years to get to where, not saying it took 18 years to get to where you're at, but 18 years of success like this is definitely something to be very proud of. I got a question. How you doing, Summer? Got a question that came in and said, do you work with clients nationwide? If so, have you noticed an increase in hiring activity in a specific region?
I haven't noticed an increase in a specific region. And yes, we work with companies all across the United States. But no, not specific region. We've got about 22 openings right now, and they're all across the United States in different parts, not really bulked in one area. So they're all over the place, even in major hotspots. You would find this interesting. So we had a client in Miami shut down all the positions in April and May because of the pandemic, and it was nothing like it is now. And then 3 weeks ago, Miami's the biggest hotspot ever, and they opened up positions. It's you know what I mean? There are no behaviors right now of consistency that I could, go by. I'm like, all right, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, that's such a good point you bring up, because there's so many people that right now they're thinking, well, I just want to kind of be quiet because I don't know what the market is. It's no, you need to be out there. There's still people that are moving. And I think what you're seeing happening, probably Miami case in point, is this isn't going anywhere. We need to start operating like business as usual. We need to figure out how we're going to make this work,
Seriously, that's what's happening. They're done.
Yep.
They are just done with this, and businesses are moving.
Yep.
They are. So.
Yeah. Definitely a good time to be putting yourself out there and going full throttle with it, because I think that we'll probably start to see some things pick up here.
Yeah, for sure.
Even more. So that's great feedback.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people listening that would, love to kind of have, the success that you've had in your business. I mean, what's one piece of advice that you could give them?
Never give up. I know that sounds so simple, but I mean, never give up. Just keep trying so many different things. It'll start popping, you know.
Yep.
Energy goes where attention flows. My team knows that for me. I say that to them all the time. If you pull back the throttle, you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna happen. But if you keep on, you know, keep that foot on the gas, it's gonna happen. It's got to. Something's gonna click. And just start looking at trends out there outside of recruiting. What are businesses,
Yep.
you know, doing to grow and to get leads? So
Excellent. That's great advice. And thank you so much again for being here with us today, Kathleen, and sharing your story and your journey with us, and the tips and advice that you gave around, you know, online marketing, lead generation, your experience with that. You know, for me, it's something I'm very passionate about, and helping us industry kind of evolve more, and talking with somebody like yourself that's been a true pioneer and doing it has been really awesome. So thank you very much for joining me today, and being here with us.
thank you. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody, we'll see you next week. We'll have another show next Friday at 12 o'clock. And until then, I'm sure you'll see me on the group a little bit more between now and then. But another live interview next week. We'll talk to everybody soon. Have a great weekend.